She betrayed him at a party with another man and woman. When he found the video, she begged for reconciliation, but he has a plan. My wife Emma is 29 years old and I am 36. We have been together for over 9 years and have been married for 6 of those years. Our assets are modest, we don't have kids, and we have more debt than savings. Emma makes around $1,300 a month, and I am the primary contributor for our apartment rent. I make about $3,600. I put forth a lot of effort to provide her the lifestyle she is accustomed to, and now I find myself in an untenable circumstance. We have a close-knit work environment, and 3 years ago, one of my co-workers persuaded me to join a leisure tennis league. Emma used to attend every game, which I assumed was her way of showing me support, but I had a sneaking suspicion that she liked the camaraderie and the refreshments. On most evenings, I would not drink too much, but she would watch and then join me on the way home. A few of us would hang out in various locations, such as our condo, a bar, or a cafe. A group had arranged to meet at one of the men homes in a nearby town 2 weeks prior. I informed them that I had to leave early the following morning due to work. Emma contacted one of the guys, who I thought was a friend, on the way home, pleading with him to give her a lift to the party. Then she inquired whether it was all right for her to go. I told her no, wanting to stay the night with her but having to go to work in the morning. She was obviously drunk and irritated as she gave me the quiet treatment. An automobile parked in front of the condo as we arrived home. My pal was there. Emma had chosen to attend the party on her own. I was enraged. Emma exited our car and entered my friend S as I proceeded to tell him that I wasn't comfortable with this and that he should depart. They left in their car. I plugged in the ancient tablet I had purchased for her years prior in a fit of wrath. I knew it had something to do with her social media and messaging accounts, even though it was out of date. I fought to remain awake and could see precisely where she was, but I finally slept off around 3 in the morning. When I woke up the following morning, she was still not home. I had no idea when she had returned home, but she was in our bed. For the first time ever, I didn't wake her up or give her a farewell kiss before leaving to get ready for work. I was angry, and I wanted her to know it. I took the medication and shoved it in my backpack before I left. That day at work, I took out the tablet after making a few calls and attending a meeting. My pal was typing on the chat app when it lighted up with a notice. I must have been using an old version of the program since I was able to see their communication in real time, despite the software's horrible message exchange that was meant to end on its own. My friend was talking about how much fun the other men had last night and how they had sex. It became worse just when I was about to lose it. I watched as my friend complied with my wife's request to email her a video of him masturbating. Regretfully, I saw everything that happened. I threw up all over the bathroom after sprinting out of my workplace. I was allowed to leave work for the day since I was trembling after what I had just witnessed. It took me many hours to calm down because I really thought I may damage myself or someone else. When I got home, she was still asleep in our bed. I invited her to come downstairs as I placed my belongings down. I asked her, sitting across from her, to go over everything that had transpired the previous evening in detail. She did, but she only spoke, drank, and played pool. She made no mention of having sex, and that was all. Then I questioned her about the last time she had talked to my friend. She said that she had exchanged a few brief messages with him that morning, nothing noteworthy. Then I dropped the big bomb. If you knew I had seen the whole thing you had with him this morning, would your account of events change? Are you leaving me? Was the first thing she said before breaking down in sobs. She told me straight out that she didn't remember everything, but she had slept with both my friend and another colleague the night before. She stated that there could have been more males, but that was all she could recall. I felt repulsed. Surprisingly, when I questioned whether this was the first time, she said that there had been previous occurrences, one even taking place in our condo while I was asleep upstairs, and that was all. I felt completely numb. She begged me not to tell anyone as she departed to stay with her family after I helped her pack her luggage. 2 weeks from learning the truth, I find myself alone in this nightmare and unsure of what to do. It's difficult to think of anything worse than finding your wife in a gangbang situation with males you've invited into your life and discovering it has been going on for months with at least one of them. I really hope this isn't the worst Discovery Day experience. She now wants to put all the blame on booze, make a vow to join AA, and seek couples counseling. She desires for us to emerge from this together. I feel all the feelings, including remorse, but I believe it as too late. I'm not sure why. I think I am making the proper decision, and I have an appointment with an attorney tomorrow. I find it impossible to even speak to her without picturing her at the heart of a horrifying incident, no matter how sad she is over her drinking and how much she wants to have this resolved. She is untrustworthy. Her behaviors, which are repeated, annoy me. I am worthy of much more than that. Even if I am not perfect, why am I feeling so guilty? This cannot be reconciled, is it? I don't seem like the evil person. It is not simple to quit caring for someone you love, especially after being completely and utterly surprised. Any advice or support would be highly appreciated. I want to reassure you that I am not the villain before we discuss the upcoming update. Alcohol is also not a valid justification in my opinion. She cheated on me several times while hiding it from me. Her sole regret is that she was discovered and now understands the repercussions of her behavior. I couldn't handle the lying and secrets, even if I could handle the adultery. I think that where the actual death of trust occurs. She gave me no information until I said that I had seen the texts when I directly asked her what had transpired that evening. I'll notify my family what is going on and obtain the greatest attorney I can. I need someone to talk to and their support. First update, sadly, the situation has deteriorated from horrifying to beyond comprehension. Horrible. Not a single word can adequately describe it. To keep my options open, I scheduled several meetings with lawyers and one with a legal document preparation professional. My spouse was unaware of the encounters. We didn't communicate directly for a few days, but she was determined to try harder this time to get us into a marriage therapist, something I had been urging for months prior to my discovery day to see if there was any chance of healing. However, I knew deep down what my decision would unavoidably be. She was successful in scheduling us with a therapist, but it would take us around a week and a half to get in. I was literally following her around with that tablet for that whole time. I was glued to it, checking Facebook, Snapchat, and everything else I could, obsessively tracking every message that came in and went out. I had no further proof after a week and a half of closely observing her every action on social media, so I reasoned that maybe she was genuinely repenting. When our appointment with the therapist eventually arrived, he asked us why we had come. I instructed her to narrate the tale to him in her own terms. The most of it was on the table, however she omitted a few specifics. After hearing everything, the therapist turned to face me and asked, "How does this make you feel about your trust in her? What impression does it give you of your marriage?" I simply shook my head in astonishment and bewilderment. I said, "If I don't say it out loud right now, I'm afraid I never will," in response to his query. For me, there's no turning back from this. It's over. This marriage. My trust has been betrayed. The vows are broken, and I believe that filing for divorce is my only option. She fully broke down into frantic screaming as my stomach ached. I went on, "I don't know what can be saved from this marriage, but it's over. I am not being true to myself if I do not acknowledge that this is broken and unfixable, even if I meant what I said at the altar." Having spoken it aloud in front of her and an impartial third party, I felt a tinge of comfort at that moment. He calmed her down and spent the rest of the therapist's appointment explaining to her why my decision and sentiments were quite reasonable under the circumstances. In fact, I think it couldn't have gone any better. He insisted on meeting us separately rather than as a couple in order to see whether he could support each of us individually before maybe getting us together for a reconciliation talk in the future, possibly years from now. Even though I have no intention of ever pursuing reconciliation at this moment, I could benefit from the individual treatment at least temporarily. Before I go any further, let me say that I understood that in the event that things did not work out amicably, I was going to be on the receiving end of a financially catastrophic and disgustingly unpleasant legal trip for the breadwinner in a no-fault state. The main idea behind the legal process is that I have to maintain good relations. Let's go back in time to a week and a half or so. We have both had at least one individual therapy session by this point, and she has told her family as much as she has that we are ending the marriage due to the vows being broken, even though we are both now working on our own healing. I am still living with relatives, therefore I am still obsessed with checking her online activity all the time for any indication that she is going to keep up her repulsive behaviors. She would not, as so many of you had suggested. Not that it is your fault, I would have looked into it anyhow. I had no idea there was a location. I had never, ever checked the App Store until one night last week. I checked the iCloud account S app download history and discovered that she had downloaded a covert texting app on her phone nearly 2 weeks before that evening. My stomach twisted. Suddenly, it became clear to me that she had been deliberately concealing some kind of communication from me, even though she knew I had her tablet, which she requested I maintain in order for me to start trusting her again. However, I firmly believe that she was unaware that a program downloaded from one iCloud device may be viewed in the past from another iCloud-connected device in the present. I had to know how that program communicated with itself. Recalling such times makes me realize that I wasn't even in control of my body. After downloading the software onto her tablet and trying a number of her frequently used login combinations, I discovered the truth. Not only had she been contacting my friend on this app since our first therapy session together, but they had also been having sex when she knew I would be out of town. I lost my appetite. I sobbed. It was a weeknight, 3 o'clock in the morning. I entered the bathroom and began to gather up all the prescription-strength drugs that I could discover. With an overflowing clutch of various tablets that would have surely been sufficient to take my life, I returned to my room. I wanted to end it all as I sobbed while sitting on the side of my bed. I tried to contact my mother after picking up my phone. Not a response. My father. Not a response. My sister finally responded. I broke down in tears as I told her what I had just learned, and she could sense I was about to lose it. Even though it was the middle of the night, she insisted on keeping me on the phone until I had calmed down, even though she was unaware that I was holding the tablets. After around 60 minutes, I was at last numb again. I ended the call, walked back to the bathroom, cleaned my hands, put the pills back into a bottle, and went back to bed in the hopes of getting the few hours of sleep that I had promised myself. As the hours ticked by, I knew I had to get to work. I had had enough of that place and that particular time. I tossed the tablet and the bottle of pills into my briefcase while I was getting ready, and when I arrived to work, I handed them both to my most reliable employee. I requested that he keep them locked up in his desk and never give them back to me under any circumstances. As I turned to go, he complied and offered me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder. I have now completed it. I found the proof I needed to conclude that my wife is not just an adulterer, but also a heartless liar. I spent days upon days trying to figure out what to do with the newfound knowledge. On the one hand, I really wanted to expose her to every family member, friend, and acquaintance I could find and tell the world what a nasty person she is, what she has done, and what she is still doing. However, I was unable to. She still had time to decide to turn nasty and make things expensive, but I was already in the process of dissolving the marriage. After several days passed with no response to her messages, calls, or attempts to get in touch, she eventually made the effort to drop by and see how I was doing. I almost lost it all throughout the interaction. I seemed nebulous and uninterested in her. I was at a loss for what action to take. I gave her a chance and asked her directly, "Have you had any contact with my friend whatsoever since that night? Before she lost her cool and began screaming at me for acting strangely?" "No, I blocked him on everything," was her reply. "Are you certain about it?" I questioned again. She said that she hadn't tea, that he was repulsive, and that she would never treat me in that way. There is no way she could do that to me. I then revealed the shocking information. What about this app and this phone video I shot of it displaying the chats you two had been having the entire time? The photos you've exchanged? The strategies you've devised to skulk around depending on my work schedule? She fell to the ground, wailing, sobbing, and I am not sure what, pleading with me. I spoke in an impartial tone. "Here's what's going to happen. You want to argue with me about anything related to the divorce process in return for my not telling anyone about this. You will be served with divorce papers, and while it shouldn't be necessary, I will be fair. However, after that, you will not take any more action. If not, people will need to be aware of my circumstance and the cause for my irrationality. It's your decision." 2 days after her departure, she received service. I've been true to my pledge and told no one save my close family since that day. But using my iPhone, I can confirm with absolute certainty that she has been to his mother S house every single night since that time. Although her family believes she attends meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous every night, my screenshots showing her whereabouts throughout the sessions show otherwise. Why in the world hasn't she changed her iCloud password, really? I'm not sure why, but I keep gathering the proof. While I know her family believes she is on the right road, which couldn't be further from the truth, I suffer with the anxiety of waiting for this period of time to pass until her right to challenge me in court has passed. She is, in reality, lying to each and every one of them. The unfairness of it all is what upsets me the most at the moment. She gets to spend time with her family and friends, seeming as though everything is okay every day. She then runs off every night to have sex with him, returning home late to maintain her FA aid. In the meanwhile, I go for work every day, return home to an abandoned and psychologically unsettling home, and experience firsthand what it's like to be completely alone. Even though I've moved past the thought of harming myself, these are still difficult days. I'm handling things hour by hour, day by day, until the day I can finally leave her in the dust and know that I'll survive this horror without losing all of my money. I'm not really sure what I'll do after that yet. All I'm trying to do is get by till then. Second update, my divorce is finally official. The need to hide out is gone. It's over after I waited the ridiculously lengthy 6 months and 1 day cooling-off period to find out if my ex-wife filed for divorce without telling me. I haven't spoken to them at all, and I feel that I can now start moving on with my life. I did as many nice people advised, giving her back the tablet and cutting all connections to accounts and gadgets that would enable me to get fixated on who, what, and where she was doing. I had sufficient knowledge. I was aware of what I want. Even while my approach to the divorce process affected me more personally in the long run, it didn't have nearly as big of an impact on my finances, and in the moment, everything made sense as the painfully slow process moved along. I realized I had to let go of her after I accepted that I would never be able to trust this lady in my life again. But I was not going to give her $2,800 a month in spousal support, month after month, for half the duration of our marriage. For crying out loud, we didn't have kids together, as my state's no-fault divorce laws would have required of me as the earning spouse. I was not going to give her even a nickel in exchange for what she had done to me. I became enraged, thought about it, and came up with a strategy to leave this marriage and her behind as soon as possible. Although I regret the strategies I employed to get through my divorce, they ultimately proved successful. Though it is only my perspective, I do believe that my moral superiority or integrity may have suffered. My acts were little in comparison to the mountains of distrust, hurt, and suffering she inflicted upon me, as far as culpability and accountability were concerned. I was waiting for their confirmation even though I had already completed and filed the divorce paperwork with the county. My wife, who was still residing with her family, wasn't informed about this. Since I forced her leave the first time, she has never been invited to stay at my house. I had scheduled many occasions for us to have conversations. I wanted to persuade her that I was still interested in trying to work on the relationship in some manner, a whole fabrication. My true goal was to hide from her the fact that she would be going through a divorce and that she would be able to seek and challenge spousal maintenance. I bought myself enough time to go through the cooling-off period and complete the divorce without her suing me on grounds of money by acting as though we were still in a relationship. I realize this seems dishonest, but it felt like a little price to pay to protect my finances in comparison to her treachery. I was quite clear in all of our conversations that this marriage, in my opinion, was gone. We would have to start over if we really wanted to start over, because the vows had been broken. In order to go on to a new, stronger relationship, we would need to mutually dissolve this one and start dating once more. It still amazes me that she purchased this. Rather than merely getting through this step so we could focus on the next together, I was really going to go above and above to make it as simple and painless as possible for her, moving quickly and keeping it out of the public spotlight. This was exemplified by the way I had her served. A mutual friend of ours dropped by to play third wheel during the handoff, signature exchange, and chat at my place, the residence we had shared. Without even looking at her documents, she sealed them in the envelope they arrived in and signed the necessary paperwork. I painted myself a very nice image, totally devoid of any spousal assistance beyond sharing what was in our account at the moment, so I doubt she ever actually did go into the details of those laborious legal procedures. Paying her spousal support was the one big thing I wanted to stay away from. I made a concerted effort to play the "I need time on my own to think" card during the first few months in order to avoid seeing her, but we managed to get together for dinner, or in a public setting around twice a month. She could never accuse me of trying to harm her because these encounters were always held in public. I maintained my look. I tricked her. Even though I had no intention of making amends, I gave her the impression that I was genuinely processing my feelings, accepting what had happened and trying to find forgiveness. By keeping her on, I was able to get her off the lease, move all of her belongings out of our house into a storage unit, and remove her from my bank accounts with her real assistance. I persuaded her that we would move out together and that, while I recovered, the home would feel much less eerie without her belongings in it. She believed she was acting in our best interests by lying to her and maintaining her in this cooperative and submissive attitude, which made all the challenging separation chores incredibly simple. I was able to see the light at the end of the tunnel for around 4 of the 6 months I had to go through with this technique. I didn't hear from a family member she was staying with until the beginning of the 4th month, when she texted me to see whether we were still able to work things out. This family member was aware of my buddy and the real story, but in an attempt to maintain my act of reconciliation, I said yes, but with a question mark. And I got back a photo of my wife and my buddy eating dinner in a restaurant in a different town, along with a text message informing me that this was actually happening at the moment. This family member chanced to be seeing coworkers together when they went out for drinks after work. That photo gave me the chills. She was still lying to me and to everyone else, hiding about with my pal while feigning regret. This realization strengthened my determination to take the divorce through to the end and make sure she didn't receive a penny above what she earned. Here's where I made a huge mistake by allowing my feelings to control me. I immediately texted my wife to ask if we could have a phone conversation. Lying to me, she answered that she was in an AA meeting and would get back to me right away. At that point, I retaliated by saying, "I didn't know my friend was now your sponsor and that they held AA meetings in restaurant name." That caught her interest. She yelled at me over the phone and accused me of stalking her right away. I responded with very strong language that the moderators would not let on this sub, essentially berating her, calling her derogatory names, and stating unequivocally that I had no intention of communicating to her ever again. She so started seeing my buddy throughout the final 2 months of the divorce, their relationship was initially discreet, but later become public. Even though I had banned them both on social media, information continued to leak in through friends. As time went on, more and more people reached out to me with inquiries about the situation. My wife seemed to be becoming more confident as she shared photos of the two of them together and status updates. I would provide them with as much information as they requested if they contacted out to me. I had to win over the connections and relationships that I genuinely loved and wished to preserve. Telling them the truth was sufficient to solve the problem. It felt more vital to have the support system behind me and to hear from others who knew us both that what she did to me was horrifying than the actual financial settlement of the divorce. I finally had someone to rant to at those moments, and boy, did I vent. Almost everyone I talked to about what had transpired had initially gotten in touch with her, in one form or another, to inquire about the identity of the person she was sharing these photos of. All of those follow-up conversations to me had one thing in common. She greatly minimized what had happened, even though, to the best of my knowledge, she didn't dispute that she had cheated. I felt obligated to provide them with the information she omitted. I firmly believe that despite their amazement, all of our friends and the majority of her closest family choose to stand behind me. I discovered that I had to ask them to calm down until the divorce was finalized. My phone kept ringing more and more as the time they spent together grew, the images got bolder, and they became more public about their connection. It was still giving me a lot of emotional agony, to the point that I had to urge them to kindly cease updating me on their advancements. Thanksgiving fell just a few days before the divorce was finalized. 3 screenshots of the same social media post, each from a different person, were sent along with the day of thanks. The two exchanged passionate embraces as she talked about how great God is for bringing such a lovely man into her life, how happy she was, and how she sincerely hoped they would one day get married. It felt like a kick to the belly to see that post. It hurt so much that she was so blatant about their connection in public, especially on Thanksgiving, the day before our divorce was officially formalized. It helped me understand how little she really knew or cared about the extent of the pain she had brought about. My friends and family's encouragement and approval during those times were my lifelines. They reminded me that I deserved more and helped me stay grounded. Even though it hurt, I felt that divorcing the husband and moving on was the correct thing to do. Their support enabled me to concentrate on starting over and anticipating a life without her. Although I want to pretend that their relationship doesn't worry me, it does. I still have a strong sense of grief in my heart, but I also feel completely repulsed by this woman's ridiculousness, grotesqueness, and callousness. Not to mention what a vile human being my buddy is. I feel ill for not being able to see this monster in front of me for so many years. I genuinely don't care about him or have the respect or energy to say anything. The karma train will definitely hit him for staying with her. Moving on is a little simpler for me now that I don't feel like I know my ex-wife anymore. Finally, the day arrived last week for our marriage to be dissolved by court appointment. She had missed her chance to challenge me on whatever we had discussed in our previous agreements, which we were still going to try to create, and I hadn't received any papers in the mail. I got to keep my whole $501K, avoided paying spousal support, had no new debt in my name, no attorneys, no court case, and would never have to deal with this individual again. When the day was over, I deleted her number from my phone. The next day, I had a divorce party thrown by 7 of my best friends, 6 of whom were also our friends. They shared pictures of the event on Snapchat all night long. It was definitely a party worth capturing on camera, and my ex-wife blocked them all on social media, and some of them even received a few hurtful emails. Her maid of honor attended my divorce celebration and has no desire to interact with her in the future. This is the last internal conflict I am experiencing. Perhaps someone has some knowledge to share. She had been sleeping with a man from her hometown during this whole time, I discovered, after searching through her digital traces back on the Obsession with Discovery Day. The problem is that this man is an old flame of hers, but he lives with a wife and child. I really can't decide if I should figure out a method to let the wife know. I am embarrassed. I have not yet been able to justify the idea of ruining a family and carrying that guilt around, which is why I have not spoken out until now. How am I going to tell her? Do I recognize myself? Shall I keep this between us? The problem is like a recurring worm in my mind that physically gives me nausea, anxiety, and sometimes even dreams. I would be grateful for any guidance. Final update: I did my best to stop communicating when the divorce was finalized in March 2023, but it is difficult to do so these days. I never talked to her or anything, but sometimes I would see a post from a distant relative of hers that I hadn't banned, or a buddy would accidentally bring up something they had seen on a common acquaintance Snapchat, things of that like. While my genuine pals made every effort to keep these kinds of developments to themselves, sometimes the news was just too significant to withhold. The first big break came in June 2023 when I received a call from one of my closest friends informing me that my ex-wife was getting remarried to an Oregonian. Hold on, what? Yes, that was accurate. My friend S.'s husband was able to get screenshots of the happenings preceding the big announcement since he hadn't yet blocked my ex-wife on Facebook. Keep in mind that everything mentioned above happened between April and August of 2023. After the divorce was finalized, it seems that my friend and she didn't survive very long. I am not familiar with the ins and outs of it. It's not unexpected at all, but I sort of wish I did. Beginning in May, she posted a series of subversive Facebook status posts suggesting that everything was occurring for a purpose and hinted that she was falling in love. Stupid soul. Then, in August, a straightforward photo with no explanation appeared on her Facebook. In the photo, she was carrying what seemed to be a marriage certificate that was geotagged in Oregon while standing in front of a courtroom with some random guy that none of us knew or had heard of. With a comment that said something like, "Excited to start the rest of my life with such an amazing man, feeling so blessed," she proudly altered her last name. "Oregon, get ready, we were coming." I just could not handle the situation. I was tremendous interest. To find out more, I got in touch with a cousin-in-law of my ex-wife, with whom I got along rather well. He gave in. She had been corresponding with her new spouse via phone conversations, messages, and other means for several months after meeting him online. He reportedly made her a phone proposal after they both seemed to be head over heels in love. When she said yes, they were quite excited. The wedding was held in a completely odd location 2 hours away from our hometown, and it happened within a week of the proposal, a real endeavor on her part to tell her family and extend an invitation to come. I'm not sure why, though. On a Saturday, they were married after he caught a plane to Oregon. They had met in person for the first time on that day as well, but they were now husband and wife. The cousin said that the worst part was that the whole family was taken by surprise. Her hurriedly planned Facebook post was how the majority of them learned about it after the event. It would be an understatement to suggest they were taken aback. I couldn't help but experience a range of feelings, including relief, shock, and an odd feeling of resolution. It felt as though my experiences had been validated in some way by her rash decisions. Her behavior, ranging from her betrayal of my buddy to her hasty marriage, demonstrated her true nature. I still experienced a slight sensation of loss and sorrow, but it was now eclipsed by a deep sense of understanding. I had married a different woman than this one. Her impetuous actions served as further evidence that she was unfamiliar with him. I'm sure it would have pained her greatly that not a single member of her family attended the courthouse wedding, whether it was because they didn't have enough time to prepare or didn't think it was appropriate. All of her stuff were packed onto a moving truck on Sunday, and on Monday they departed for Oregon in the east. It seemed unbelievable to me. The date and tale are real, I've heard from enough people by now, but at the time it seemed unreal. That dude is so impoverished. If only he were aware. If he had known, he would have known better than to tie the knot in Oregon, a no-fault state where he would find himself in a similar predicament to mine with her. Hopefully, instead of being that dumb, he was just ignorant. I tried my hardest to ignore the thought of them both for the time being, but I took comfort in the fact that they were going far, far away, making it unlikely that I would ever run across her again. In 2023, summer came and went, but another bombshell landed in the middle of October. As I scrolled through Instagram, a video of my ex-wife holding a dish in front of her father and him shielding his eyes with his hands appeared on my screen. Before I knew what I was seeing, I noticed that there was just one cookie covered in blue frosting on the dish. The voice of my former spouse rang out, announcing that it was a boy. 3, 2, 1. It was a gender reveal video when her father unveiled his eyes. Why is this what I am seeing? Her mother had recently made her Instagram account fully public and uploaded a video of her spouse looking thrilled. I want to view this video from someone I might know, Instagram's algorithm apparently thought. I went utterly crazy. It was truly a terrible few days and restless nights. I was disgusted by a mixture of agony, contempt, irritation, and even a little envy. Being a father is one of my greatest life goals, and if everything had gone differently in her past timeline, now may have been the moment when we became parents. My child could have been involved. It was possible that I would have become a parent. Now that I am 39 years old, I never would have imagined that I would be a parent by now, much less that I would be moving toward a relationship, much less a kid. As an adult, I understand that I still have time to fulfill my goal with someone. I love and am content with who I am, but I can't help but compare my current situation to my expectations for where I should be in life by now. All I know for sure is that I would much prefer be in my place than the soon-to-be Father S in this specific case. I assume the baby has most likely been born by now. I've been fortunate enough, along with the support of people around me, not to have heard anything. Even while I'm aware that this is a better situation to be in than the other, I can't help but wonder occasionally. The good news is that, when I give it some serious thought, I've been thinking about her and her dumpster fire of a life less and less these days, and I count that as progress. I am learning to deal, but there are still tough days, made much worse by inconvenient memories like that video.